sons and daughters, colleagues, veterans will all have a part to play, and more families will know what sacrifice for our nation means.
Britain is on edge, and not in the metaphorical, stiff upper lip kind of way. We're talking national alerts, breached government data, rising military tension, and a growing sense of the ground beneath this so-called stable democracy might be crumbling. In the span of just 72 hours, 3 nationwide security alerts rolled out like fire drills for a threat no one can quite name, but everyone feels breathing down their neck. Cyber attacks have already cracked open the vault. Sensitive government databases, with tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now. It's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting, including criminal records, have been compromised, exposing critical vulnerabilities in systems that were supposed to protect civil order. But what's worse than stolen data? The trust that leaks out with it. People aren't just worried about the information itself. They are starting to question the competency of the institutions behind it. At the same time, Britain's military is quietly moving into a new gear. Officials are painting a future where defense isn't just about soldiers in uniform, but everyday civilians, families, and veterans rallying in a new kind of war effort. Sounds noble on paper, right? But in practice, it signals a shift. A shift toward a world where warfare isn't confined to a battlefield. It's your power grid, your hospital, your Wi-Fi router. And more than ever, it's your belief in the system. Because here's the thing, the threats Britain is preparing for aren't just conventional. They are hybrid. And hybrid warfare isn't about tanks and missiles. It's about cracking the foundation of society from within. You don't need to fire a single shot when you can erode public trust, stoke division, and let the chaos unfold on its own. And right now, the cracks are widening. Intelligence agencies are seeing a 47% spike in cyber threats from hostile state actors. The targets? Civilian infrastructure, hospitals, energy grids, not military bases, not weapons caches, everyday systems that keep society functioning. Simulations show how these attacks could cause mass disruption, not with explosions, but with blackouts, medical failures, breakdown of emergency services, and yes, loss of life. Not from violence, but from silence, from systems that quietly shut down when they are needed most. That's the quiet horror of hybrid war. It doesn't look like a war until it's too late. And while Britain ramps up military preparedness, including recruiting migrants into service, there's a storm brewing on the streets. Protests, public backlash, a growing sense that the government is asking for sacrifice without transparency. I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe and like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. People aren't just skeptical, they feel abandoned. The promise of unity feels paper-thin when the message from the top doesn't match the reality on the ground. There's a dissonance. The government calls for shared sacrifice, but who's actually carrying the weight? When the country's most vulnerable feel disposable, when legitimacy is questioned, when decision-making feels opaque, that's when the trust frays. And when trust goes, resilience follows. That's exactly what hybrid warfare exploits. The goal isn't to invade, it's to destabilize. Disinformation campaigns, cyber attacks, targeted psychological pressure. This is a slow, corrosive strategy. It's not about taking over territory. It's about turning a society against itself, weakening institutions from the inside out, making people doubt everything, leaders, policies, each other. And the UK, right now, is walking a knife's edge. The government says it prepared. It's rolling out new security protocols. It's reinforcing military readiness. But none of that matters if the public stops listening. If civilians disengage, if people resist, if no one believes what they are being told, what good are defenses? A military is only as strong as a society it's protecting. And if the social fabric unravels, the whole strategy collapses from within. It's not just about cybersecurity. It's not even about conventional security. It's about social cohesion. Trust is no longer just a value, it's a national asset. And right now, that asset is depreciating fast. Look at the messaging breakdown. On one hand, the government calls for unity. On the other, controversial policies like expanding military recruitment to migrant-stoke division. Whether you agree with the policy or not, the optics matter. It feeds a perception of asymmetry. Some sacrifice more, some benefit more, and no one feels like they're in this together. And that perception? That's exactly what hybrid warfare is designed to amplify. Because you don't need to blow up infrastructure if you can get people to stop cooperating. If you can convince citizens that their leaders are lying, that their sacrifices are pointless, that their neighbors are the problem, then you've already won. Without trust, there is no resilience. And without resilience, even the most high-tech defenses will fail. We're not in an era of immediate collapse. We're in an era of systemic degradation. It's slower, harder to detect, and more dangerous for it. Cyber attacks now aren't necessarily about flipping switches. You've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm. They're about setting timers, undermining systems over weeks and months, chipping away at stability until one small push sends a whole thing down. This is where the UK stands, facing not just a geopolitical rival in Russia, but an internal crisis of legitimacy. The public no longer trusts as easily. The institutions can't respond as quickly. And the space between policy and perception, it's widening by the day. In a hybrid conflict, time is the enemy. You don't get months to rally. You don't get years to rebuild trust. You need fast decisions, rapid communication. But when every message is filtered through public skepticism and political fatigue, the delays pile up, the response weakens, the fractures deepen. It's not just about firewalls, it's about faith. The UK's top military leaders know this. They are calling for a whole-of-society defense model, one where civilians aren't just observers, but participants, not just protected, but active in resilience building. But even that vision struggles to land in a country where protests erupt over fairness and transparency, where some feel they're being drafted into a system that doesn't see them. This isn't just a security issue, it's a societal one. You can't wage a successful defense without consent. And consent is built on legitimacy, on fairness, on transparency. If people believe the system is rigged, or worse, indifferent, they'll opt out. And you can't defend society from the sidelines. So the question becomes, who will the people stand with? Because in this kind of conflict, there's no neutral ground. You're either strengthening the system, or you're weakening it. And the greatest risk isn't a missile, it's mass disengagement. A population that no longer believes in the fight, or even in the need for one. And once that tipping point is reached, recovery isn't fast. It's not as simple as resetting servers or patching software. You have to rebuild trust, re-legitimize institutions, re-earn the right to lead. And in a moment of sustained pressure, that's the hardest task of all. This is what Britain faces. Not just external aggression, but internal uncertainty. A war that's being waged without bullets, but with breaches. Without soldiers, but with silence. The kind of war that doesn't announce itself, but shows up in empty streets, failed systems, and voices that no longer bother to speak. So while the headlines warn of Russia and retaliation, the real battle is playing out beneath the surface. In public sentiment, in civil resilience, in whether the people of Britain still trust the people leading them. Because without that, it won't matter how strong the firewalls are. With tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now, it's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting, or how many troops stand ready. What happens next depends on that trust. And right now, it's hanging by a thread. If this story hit a nerve, drop a comment. Do you think Britain can hold the line, not just militarily, but socially? Like and share if you want more breakdowns like this. And don't forget to subscribe. We've got more on the way. The unsettling part? This isn't just Britain's problem. But Britain right now is a case study, the canary in the coal mine for what happens when a supposedly stable democracy faces modern warfare without traditional weapons. It's being tested not by bombs, but by breakdowns, not by invasion, but by implosion. And the warning signs? They are everywhere. Take the military's recent messaging. Top brass are saying, out loud, that families should start thinking about their role in national defense. Civilians might have to take part. This isn't some wartime nostalgia. This is now. This is a real-time shift toward a future where defense doesn't just mean men in camo. It means nurses, IT workers, students, parents, everyone. It's a call to arms that doesn't involve weapons. It involves participation, engagement, resilience. But here's the catch. You can't ask for that level of buy-in if people don't believe you anymore. That's what makes this moment so dangerous. You've got a government that's scrambling to prepare for threats that most citizens can't see and don't fully trust are real. You've got simulations showing how a cyber attack could take down hospitals, but headlines focus on political scandals. You've got civil service infrastructures under strain, but people are still waiting for accountability, transparency, and proof that their sacrifices mean something. It's a recipe for disengagement, because people don't revolt with pitchforks anymore. They do it with apathy. They stop showing up. They ignore the warnings. They reject the narrative. And when you're fighting a war of attrition, that's fatal. When trust is gone, warnings look like manipulation. Every alert becomes noise. Every announcement sounds like spin. That's the soft power collapse happening under Britain's nose. And let's talk about these data breaches for a second. This isn't just a digital crime. It's a psychological hit. The idea that someone, somewhere, has access to confidential government records, including criminal files, that shakes confidence in the entire system. You start asking, who's watching the watchers? Who let this happen? And more importantly, what else don't we know? It's a feeling of control slipping away. I know things feel really heavy in the UK right now. There's a lot of division and noise on the streets, but I want this channel to be a place where we can come together. If you want to be part of a supportive community, please subscribe. And like this video to show some love to everyone feeling anxious about the state of things right now. Stay safe out there, everyone. That slow dawning dread that no one's actually in charge. That your country isn't just under attack, it's already compromised. And this is where the hybrid warfare strategy shines. It thrives in that fog of doubt. Russia isn't trying to win battles in the traditional sense. They are trying to exhaust systems, wear down resistance, turn allies against each other, make the population question every move until the entire state apparatus becomes paralyzed by distrust. This is a long game, not designed to conquer, but to corrode. And in Britain, that corrosion is starting to show. Look at public reactions. Instead of rallying, people are protesting, not against the enemy, but against their own government. The issue? Fairness, legitimacy. They are not convinced this war footing is about them. They are seeing migrant recruitment into the military and asking, why now? Why them? Why us? It's not about xenophobia. It's about clarity, about whether the people feel represented in the decisions that supposedly protect them. And right now, the answer seems to be no. That widening gap between public perception and government messaging, that's the real battleground. You can throw all the money you want at cybersecurity. You can roll tanks through London if you want. But if the people don't buy in, it's performative. It's a fortress built on sand. And it goes deeper. Britain's institutional credibility is being tested under pressure. Every delay in communication, every failure to follow through, every moment of opacity adds fuel to the hybrid fire. The system starts to feel not just slow, but broken. And when emergencies strike, speed is everything. But speed is impossible without trust, without legitimacy, without a society that believes collectively in the mission. And here's where it gets bleak. Experts aren't even saying these attacks will create instant collapse. They are saying it will be systemic degradation, a slow unraveling. You don't notice it right away. But the signs are there. Traffic control glitches, emergency response delays, power outages, missing medical records, systems failing not all at once, but just enough to create panic. And then, one day, something gives. The system doesn't respond when it should. People get hurt. maybe worse. And everyone starts asking, how did we get here? The answer? We got here when the public stopped trusting the system, when legitimacy eroded, when the gap between policy and people became too wide to bridge, when the government kept, you've seen the headlines, but the atmosphere down here is completely different. Subscribe so you don't miss the raw footage I'm releasing later this week, and like this video to help push this unfiltered reporting up the algorithm, saying we're all in this together while the public looked around and saw inequality, confusion, and unanswered questions. That's not a communications problem. That's a collapse in shared reality. And hybrid warfare loves a divided reality. Because the moment people stop believing their neighbors, their leaders, their institutions, that's when the real damage starts. The collapse isn't in the infrastructure. It's in the belief that the infrastructure will be there when you need it. And if you think this is just a temporary rough patch, consider this. Rebuilding trust takes years. And in the context of hybrid warfare, years is a lifetime. If public confidence tanks now, if people disengage now, the entire resilience framework, civilian readiness, emergency protocols, crisis response, becomes theoretical. Britain could have the best plans on paper. But paper doesn't fight wars. People do. And if people are angry, confused, or checked out, the defenses don't stand a chance. That's why legitimacy has become a national security issue. It's not abstract, it's survival. It's whether people believe the state deserves their cooperation, their patience, their belief. Because once they don't, it's over. You can't legislate trust. You can't draft social cohesion. You have to earn it. Right now, the government is walking a tightrope. It's trying to prepare for something it can't fully define while convincing a skeptical public to play along. And in the middle of all this, the clock is ticking. Because if Russia, or any other hostile actor, senses that Britain's internal walls are crumbling, the attacks won't stop. They'll escalate. Slowly, subtly, enough to destabilize but not provoke a dramatic response. Enough to cause confusion without a declaration of war. Just enough to keep everyone off balance while confidence slips quietly through the cracks. And if that sounds dramatic, it is, because this isn't a TV plot. This is a real-time stress test of Britain's entire social contract. So, here's the hard question. Can Britain hold the line? Not just against external threats, but against internal collapse? Can it bridge the gap between policy and public? Can it rebuild the trust it needs to respond quickly, act decisively, and stand together in a time of prolonged pressure? Because that's what hybrid warfare tests. Not strength, but stamina. Not readiness, but resilience. And resilience doesn't come from technology. It comes from people, from unity, from shared sacrifice that actually feels shared, from systems that earn their legitimacy day after day, crisis after crisis. Without that, the strongest defenses in the world are just noise. With tensions rising across the UK and thousands taking to the streets of London right now, it's more important than ever to see the full picture. If you want to stay updated on the situation as it unfolds, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I'm covering the angles the mainstream media might miss, like this video if you believe in unfiltered reporting. Alright, so let's not sugarcoat it. Britain is sitting in a pressure cooker. And the heat is coming from all sides. One side's lit by foreign adversaries waging silent cyber wars. The other side, that internal, built on public skepticism, slow-burning distrust, and policies that seem increasingly out of sync with reality on the ground. And here's what no one wants to admit out loud. You don't need a bomb to destroy a country. You just need doubt. Not paranoia, not fear, just that quiet, knowing doubt that says, is this system really going to protect me? Because once that thought sets in, the rest follows. You start questioning everything. The alerts, the leadership, the sudden rush to involve civilians in national defense. And before you know it, you've got a society trying to fight a war it doesn't even believe is real, while the real damage creeps in through every unguarded digital door. That's where we are. And let's get one thing straight. This isn't a sci-fi threat. This is not maybe in 10 years. It's now. Government systems have already been breached. Sensitive information, like criminal records, has been leaked. Think about that. Not just emails or internal memos. Criminal records. The kind of data that can upend lives, fuel blackmail, disrupt investigations, and demolish public trust in the justice system. This isn't just a data issue. It's a legitimacy crisis. Because if the state can't protect your most sensitive information, what can it protect? And while Britain scrambles to patch those digital wounds, there's a broader identity crisis brewing. The military is quietly rolling out a strategy that includes civilians, yes, civilians, as essential parts of defense. Veterans, families, everyday people being asked to step up. The messaging is clear. Defense isn't just a government's job anymore. It's everyone's. And sure, that might sound noble. Collective effort. Unity. But let's be honest. How well is that message landing in a country where trust in leadership is already on life support? How do you convince the public to fight for a system they're not even sure is fighting for them? This is a contradiction at the core of Britain's current spiral. The government is pushing for mass resilience while simultaneously alienating the very people it needs to be resilient. Protests are breaking out, not against foreign threats, but against domestic policies. Military recruitment strategies, particularly involving migrants, have stirred frustration, not just because of who is being recruited, but because of how it's being done. Because optics matter. When you say, "We're all in this together," but your policies suggest otherwise, people don't unify. They fracture. And those fractures, that's the real battlefield of hybrid warfare. This isn't just Russia poking at firewalls. This is about weaponizing inequality, exploiting division, amplifying grievances. When people feel like pawns in a game they don't understand, it only takes a whisper campaign, just a few doctored headlines, a handful of leaked messages, to tip them from suspicion into full-on disengagement. Because hybrid warfare doesn't want panic. It wants apathy, a numb, checked-out public that no longer has the energy or will to participate. That's a perfect outcome. And right now, Britain is closer to that than anyone wants to admit. Let's zoom in on the psychological side of this. Hybrid threats don't shock you into action. They weigh you down. They make you second-guess. They sow fatigue. A leaked memo here, a mysterious outage there, a delay in public response during a national alert. These aren't random errors. They're cumulative pressure points. And the longer they go unaddressed, the more people start asking, do they even have a handle on this? Once that question takes root, every government move becomes suspect. Every emergency drill looks like a cover-up. Every new policy looks like desperation. And the worst part? The state has no obvious way to prove the opposite. Because in a trust vacuum, even truth looks suspicious. So while leaders scramble to modernize the country's defense playbook, they are facing a different kind of frontline, the battle for belief. Do people believe in the system? In the institutions? In each other? Right now, the answer is complicated. And complicated isn't good when you're facing threats that demand rapid, unified, decisive action. Britain's internal response systems rely on trust at every level. Emergency services, crisis communication, public compliance. These aren't just mechanical processes. They are social contracts. And hybrid warfare is designed to break those contracts without ever setting foot on British soil. Because the goal isn't military occupation. It's civil erosion. It's making sure that when the power grid goes down, no one believes the government's explanation. When hospitals are hit by cyber attacks, people assume it's incompetence, not foreign interference. When alerts go off, they're ignored, not because people aren't scared, but because they're tired. Tired of being jerked around. Tired of feeling expendable. That exhaustion, it's lethal, and not just metaphorically. Simulations already show how sustained attacks on civilian infrastructure could lead to widespread casualties, not because bombs are dropping, but because systems fail. Ambulances don't arrive. Heating shuts off. Water becomes unsafe. And the public, fractured and skeptical, is too slow to act in unison. That's the nightmare scenario. And again, it's not hypothetical. These simulations are based on real vulnerabilities, real intelligence, real attack vectors that are already being exploited in low-level ways. So the question isn't, could this happen? The question is, what's stopping it from happening now? And the uncomfortable answer? Very little. Because the weakest link isn't the code, it's the cohesion. The shared belief that the state will respond, that the people will cooperate, that the whole system will hold. And when that belief falters, everything else becomes dominoes. That's why this isn't just a tech issue or a defense issue. This is a societal emergency. The kind that doesn't scream in your face, but builds quietly, invisibly, until one day it hits a tipping point. And when that day comes, it won't look like war. It'll look like silence. Screens that don't load. Services that don't respond. Warnings that no one believes. Leadership that can't lead because no one's following. That's how societies fall in the modern era. Not with a bang, but with a shrug. So if the UK wants to survive what's coming, it's not just about buying better firewalls or expanding military budgets. It's about repairing the invisible foundation, public trust. That means transparency. That means communication that doesn't sound like spin. That means leadership willing to face public anger and still stay accountable. Because yes, resilience requires readiness. But readiness means nothing if your population doesn't believe you. This is the uncomfortable truth most governments don't want to face. You can't outspend mistrust. You can't overarm your way out of social erosion. You can only rebuild. And rebuilding is slow. It's thankless. But it's the only shot at weathering the long game of hybrid warfare. Because that's what this is, a long game. Not a single attack, not a one-off breach, but an ongoing campaign to chip away at stability until the country becomes its own worst enemy. So what now? Will Britain double down on silence and vague statements, hoping to ride out the storm? Or will it finally address the fractures, the ones that make it so vulnerable in the first place? Because the real threat isn't just coming from Moscow. It's coming from within, from every ignored protest, every muffled question, every delayed explanation. Trust doesn't just erode in a crisis. It erodes before the crisis. And when the real hits come, it's already too late to fix. So if you're watching this and thinking, this sounds like a mess, you're right. It is a mess, but it's a preventable one. That is, if the system can swallow its pride, face the doubt head-on, and start treating trust like the strategic asset it is. Otherwise, Britain might not lose this war in the traditional sense. It might just drift out of it, one broken system and one disengaged citizen at a time. Let's cut to it. Britain is not at war, but it's under attack. And that difference, it matters less and less with every passing week. You don't need fighter jets in your skies to be in a conflict anymore. You just need your systems glitching, your citizens distrusting, and your leaders fumbling for control in a fog of confusion and silence. That's hybrid warfare. It's not a battle you see. It's one you feel, slowly, like a low-grade fever that never breaks. And here's the uncomfortable part. Britain's immune system is down. No, not literally, but metaphorically, spiritually, institutionally. It's frayed. Because what hybrid warfare really targets is your ability to believe. To believe in your hospitals when the power goes out. To believe in your emergency services when alerts light up your phone. To believe in your leaders when they say, "We've got this under control." That belief is your national defense now. And right now, it's hanging by a thread. Let's not pretend this is all theoretical anymore. We've already seen the breaches. Top-level government data exposed. Not just boring bureaucratic files, but sensitive personal records, criminal histories, the kind of information that should be locked down with every possible safeguard. But those safeguards weren't enough. And once the breach happened, the damage wasn't just technical, it was emotional, psychological, societal. Because when institutions lose control over information, they don't just lose data, they lose the illusion of competence. And in a crisis, perception is everything. People don't need perfect governments, but they do need functional ones, transparent ones, trustworthy ones. And when they see that the backbone of national security can be hacked, that alerts are firing off but answers aren't coming in, that's when people start opting out. They stop paying attention. They stop preparing. They stop caring. That's how hybrid warfare wins. It doesn't need to conquer your land. It just needs to conquer your confidence. So what is Britain actually doing about this? Well, the military is stepping up. There's no doubt about that. There's a clear shift in tone from leadership. No more cold warrior notions of neat battlefields and distant enemies. They are saying it plainly. Every citizen is now part of the defensive line. Civilians are no longer passive observers. They are being positioned as a crucial part of resilience. And not just in some abstract, motivational speech kind of way. They mean it. They want families prepared, veterans mobilized, neighborhoods informed. The state is no longer the lone shield. Society is the armor now. But again, armor only works if it's intact, if it trusts itself. And right now, that's a problem. The UK government is asking for unified resilience, while the public is increasingly fragmented. There's no clear message. There's no consistent leadership voice. Instead, you've got rising protests, growing suspicions, and a media landscape that feeds more chaos and clarity. And if you look at where public anger is boiling over, it's not even about Russia. It's about the disconnect, the optics of sacrifice, the feeling that some people are being asked to give everything, while others give nothing. The outrage over migrant recruitment isn't just about policy, it's about perception. The public sees a system making desperate moves while preaching stability. It doesn't land, and people know when a message doesn't land. That mismatch between what people see and what they are told is the perfect fuel for hybrid interference. Foreign actors don't even have to plant the division. They just highlight it, amplify it, push it into your feed at just the right moment when your frustration is peaking. And you can't defend against that with tanks. You defend against that with truth, with transparency, with leadership that doesn't flinch when the questions get uncomfortable. Because right now, the UK isn't being tested on its military strength. It's being tested on its cohesion. Can it hold together under sustained psychological and infrastructural pressure? Can its citizens trust that the alerts they receive are real? That their leaders are honest? That their neighbors are in this with them, not against them? That's what modern security comes down to. Not missiles, but mutual belief. And there's another layer no one's talking about enough: fatigue. This isn't a one-day emergency. This is a prolonged, grinding pressure campaign. Alerts coming in day after day. New threats every week. Constant warnings that something might happen. At a certain point, people tune out. They start assuming every emergency notification is just another false alarm. Every cyber incident, just more background noise. That's exactly what these hybrid tactics are designed to do: desensitize the population until the real attack doesn't even need to be loud. It just has to arrive quietly when no one's paying attention. This is a slow disarmament of public urgency. It's not incompetence, it's exhaustion. And in that exhaustion, systems start to fail, not because they are broken, but because no one believes they are worth fixing. You get apathy. You get disengagement. You get a society that doesn't show up for itself anymore. And that's a final win condition in hybrid warfare: disinterest. Once you get people to stop believing in anything, truth, leadership, responsibility, you don't have to hack their systems anymore. They'll collapse under the weight of their own indifference. So what's the fix? It's not just stronger tech. It's not just better policies. It's rebuilding the bridge between government and the governed, making communication clear, making intentions transparent, showing, not just telling, that the public's role in national security actually matters, and that leadership is willing to meet them halfway. Because you cannot mobilize a nation on vibes and PowerPoints. You need to lead with clarity, with urgency, and most of all, with humility. That's what earns back trust. That's what rebuilds cohesion. And without that cohesion, the UK's defense posture is just theater. It might look tough from the outside, but inside, it's brittle. And the next wave of attacks, whether cyber, psychological, or structural, won't crack it from above. It'll collapse from within. So here's where this leaves us. Britain is standing on the edge of something. Maybe not war in the conventional sense, but conflict, absolutely. A conflict where every system is a target. Every mind is a battleground. Every moment of silence is an opportunity for misinformation to take root. The UK has the resources. It has the intelligence. It has the military. What it needs, desperately, is to rebuild belief, reconnect with its people, restore legitimacy in a way that isn't PR, isn't performative, but real. Because the next emergency won't wait for public opinion to catch up. It won't pause while politicians bicker or committees review strategies. It'll come when trust is at its lowest, and it'll hit hardest where belief is weakest. And if Britain isn't ready for that, the enemy won't have to win. The country will lose itself. Drop a comment. Do you think the UK can turn this around before the next breach? Are people too burned out to care anymore, Or is there still enough trust left to rebuild? Hit like if you think this kind of quiet warfare is more dangerous than it seems. Share this with someone who still thinks resilience is just a military buzzword. And subscribe, because this is only going to get messier. And someone's got to say it out loud.